House of the Dragon episode 5 certainly kicked the show up a gear. Let's talk about why. Hey guys, I'm Karl. Welcome to my movie film show. Feel free to subscribe down below if you would like to, but we're here today to talk about episode 5 of House of the Dragon. And like I just said at the beginning, this episode really kicked things up a gear. Action right from the beginning with Matt Smith killing his own wife, who we haven't seen at all in the series. She's just been alluded to. It certainly set the tone for the whole episode. More violence, more conspiring, and perhaps one of the most important episodes of the show so far. Now, interestingly, episode 6 is where we get that jump in time I mentioned last week, where they're jumping forward. I thought it was 3 or 4 years, but based on the preview HBO put out for episode 6, it looks like jumping almost 10 years into the future, which is quite interesting in itself. We'll find out more next week. One thing I will say is, if you haven't seen the preview, don't watch it if you don't want that spoiler regarding what happened at the end of episode 5. Regarding the king. From the preview for episode 6, it looks like this is when the show is really going to kick into high gear. Episode 5 is on a fantastic episode of laying that bedrock and breaking all the characters up. I mentioned in my review of episode 4, I felt like it was only a couple of characters within the main story so far. That massively got blown wide open in episode 5. There's more paths, there's more stories, and it'll be interesting to see where they go in the future with it. I enjoyed episode 5 the most of the show so far, although it did have its down points, and it was awkward to watch in Ireland because we get English stations for it and the Queen was being buried, so they didn't have any ads on TV and it was just pure silence, just the logo from Sky TV. Really awkward. The show had some really interesting scenes at the wedding scene, or the pre-wedding scene. It was the day before the wedding, wasn't it? When the big brawl breaks out, I was completely lost for a moment as to what was actually happening. Couldn't quite tell who was attacking who. At first I thought maybe Matt Smith's character had stabbed Rhaenyra. That would have been quite an interesting shock in itself. But it turned out it was just one guy beating a different guy's head into a pulp. You don't see that every day on TV. Even his reasons for doing it could still be questionable. Was it just a moment of madness? Was he jealous? You can speculate all day on it. Of course, there's going to be people in the comment section going, oh, it was definitely because of this. You're an idiot for not knowing this. But, you know, it's up for speculation. Maybe he was just homophobic. The interesting thing with this episode, and perhaps the most interesting character in this episode, was Allison Hightower, played by Emily Carey, so as I mentioned so far. Next week, she's going to be played by Olivia Cook. Her character is basically a side character for most of the series, and all of a sudden, yesterday, she became a cornerstone character. Very reminiscent of Cersei in places. Certain attitudes, certain way she was doing things. And it looks like she's going to be an important character moving forward, more so than she was in any other episode so far. It was also very interesting when Rhaenyra says to Matt Smith's character to take her away and to marry her. You know, we went through the whole incest stuff in last week's review. If you haven't seen that, check that out as to why I thought that was creepy in itself. But it's interesting that they both want the same thing. Whether that leads to something, we'll find out next week. So many interesting storylines this one. Even at the end when Allison saves Crispin, whatever his name was, the guard who beat the other guard's head to a pulp, when she saves him from committing suicide. What's the plan there? What's she got up her sleeve there? Was she just looking for a ride? Who knows? And then of course, right at the end of episode 5, when the wedding is completed, the king collapses. And as I mentioned, don't watch the preview for episode 6 if you want to know what happens next, because there's a huge spoiler in the preview HBO put out yesterday for episode 6. But after watching it, I am very excited for episode 6. The show has gone from strength to strength. As I predicted right at the beginning, my first review was that I was disappointed in the show. At least that's what I titled and thumbnailed it, which a lot of people clearly thought was my actual review. But in that review, I did say I was disappointed of episode 1. I expected a little bit more, but I expected the show to go from strength to strength and get better and better as it went along. But I didn't expect it to get this much better, because I think going by each episode, it gets stronger and stronger and stronger, and I suddenly find myself eagerly anticipating the next episode. If you haven't watched House of the Dragon so far, I'd highly recommend it, because it's getting pretty damn good, heading towards episode 6. But this is where I throw it over to you guys, because I'd love to hear your opinions on House of the Dragon episode 5. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let me know in a comment section below. And as soon as you're done with that, don't forget to check out another video on the channel. There's one right over here, there's one right over here, and checking out another one greatly helps the channel.